This is a big deal.
And just on a slightly more personal note, on this, your 306th briefing, what advice do you have for your successor?
So I was asked this question, I think, when my successor was announced, and it's pretty much the same, which is, obviously I wish her the best of luck. This is a great job, an amazing opportunity to be standing at this podium behind this lectern, to go back and forth with all of you and speak on behalf of this president, the president of the United States. There's nothing like it, and I hope she enjoys the job. I hope she continues to do this, what we've been doing for the past almost 4 years, and I truly wish her well.
The decision the president made to include Steve Witkoff, how did that come about?
Look, that is, I'm not going to...
And why did the president do it?
Well, look, this goes back to what the president said right after the election. A peaceful transfer of power. Again, something that he didn't get 4 years ago. And wanting to make sure that we had an effective, efficient transition. That's what it looks like. The president is basically leading by example. That's what he's doing. This is a president who understands norms, who understands institutions, and understands how important that is. And he wanted to respect the outcome of the election, the will of the people. And that is what you've seen this president do.
At any point did the president think maybe this deal will not be reached on his watch?
The president was hopeful. He was optimistic. This is, as you know, I think you know this, Steve, this is a president that tends to be optimistic and hopeful, but not just that, does the work, leans in, has the experience to get things done, which is what we saw from this president today. I think this is a great example of that. And, he never gave up hope. Never gave up hope. And to your point, until the last minute, and we were able to get this done.
Thank you, Karine. This is the second negotiated pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. The first, as you know, was reached more than a year ago in November 2023. Fighting then resumed just a few weeks later. So what confidence does the U.S. have that this time will be different?
We are going to have confidence, right? I think it's important, stepping back. Negotiations are hard. They're difficult. This was a difficult one. This took multiple sides to come together. The president, as you know, spoke to Qatar, the leader of Qatar, Egypt, and even Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu recently. And this is what diplomacy looks like, having those continued conversations, making sure that voices are heard, and having those tough back and forth. And so we have to be, I think it is important to also be confident in that we can continue to get this done. And, Steve just asked me, why did we bring in Witkoff? Why did we bring in the Trump? This is why. Because we know that there has to be a continuation of this. We know that this first phase is about to start. There's going to be a second phase, and it's going to continue. We got to get to a place where this war is done permanently, ends permanently. And so bringing in the Trump administration, coordinating with them, and making sure that they're having the information that we all have, we are hopeful that this will continue.
Under the framework, negotiations for that phase 2 would need to begin within a matter of days after phase 1 begins. What is the White House's view of the commitment of the incoming Trump team and the competency of the Trump team to go through those negotiations and get a phase 2 and beyond?
So I would refer you to the National Security Advisor. Jake Sullivan talked about his relationship and back and forth with his counterpart and how that has gone very well. And so I think that's a good sign of how this is going to certainly move forward. Again, we have been in close coordination with their team, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to talk through with them on the next steps, and we're going to and what you have seen in the past, certainly couple of days, couple of weeks, is one voice coming together in one voice to get this deal done. I think a lot of your questions obviously go to the transition team, and they can certainly answer and speak for themselves. But what we can speak to, what I can speak to, is what we've been doing, what we have actively done for the past couple of weeks to get this done in unison, to get this done in a way that when the transition happens, we have that confidence that we can move this forward, continue to move this forward.
More light on other officials from the incoming administration that you and your colleagues in the West Wing have been hosting for meetings and conversations, and what those have looked like?
So I can't shed any light on that. What I can say is that we have been working closely with the transition team. We want this to be efficient. We want this to be effective. We are doing this. The president wants to do this on behalf of the American people, and that's what you can count on. I'm not going to list out names of folks who we've been talking to.
And just finally, Karine, a new CNN poll that's out this morning shows that just 36% of U.S. adults say they approve of the way that Biden has handled the presidency. To what do you attribute that?
I mean, look, I've been very careful in talking about polls and not speaking to every poll. I understand this is a CNN poll. What I can speak to is what the president has done to get things delivered for the American people. If you think about beating Big Pharma, if you think about lowering healthcare costs, bringing manufacturing jobs back, or manufacturing back here more broadly, if you think about insulin, capping insulin at $35 a month for seniors, all of those things that I just listed out are very popular with the American people. They are. And that has always been at the forefront of the president's mind. What can he do to deliver for the American people on the needs that they care about? And that's the type of economic policy that he put forward. That's what he wanted to make sure we didn't leave anybody behind. And many communities have felt that they've been left behind. That's why we talk about building an economy from the bottom up, middle out. That's been his focus, and you can see the results. More than 16 million jobs created. When you think about more than 20 million small businesses started, people don't start small businesses unless they feel confident about the economy, and those two go hand in hand. And so, look, we're going to continue to do the work. Continue to make sure that we do everything possible in the last couple of days to deliver for the American people, and that's the president's focus. Let's not forget, when he walked in, there was a pandemic, once-in-a-generation pandemic, and he turned that around. And so the president's going to address the American people later today, farewell address, and he'll certainly have a lot to say. Go ahead, JoJo.
Thanks, Karine. Yeah.
Last time I'll be able to say that.
I know. Thanks for taking questions these last couple of years.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, President-elect Trump, in a social media statement today, said the ceasefire deal could only have happened as a result of his election victory. What's your response to that assessment? Do you agree with that? Disagree?
Look, I think the president was asked some version of that question. I think that was the first question that he got after he spoke. And I said this, everyone's going to want to take credit. That's how these things work. But the fact of the matter is, in order for this deal to have been done, there needed to be a framework. The person who provided that framework was President Joe Biden. And we have been working on this for some time. It didn't just come together in the last couple of days. It didn't just start the last couple of days. And so, and not only that, he put together a framework. It got endorsed by the world. That's not an easy thing to do. And, and so that's part of the first thing that he was able to do. The second thing that he was able to do was support Israel, and by supporting Israel, that badly weakened Hamas. You saw what happened to Hamas's leadership, and what we were able to do to the backers of Hamas. And so all of those things mattered. Our support and what we were able to do, how this president stepped in, matters. And now we are in a situation where we're going to pass this over to the incoming administration. A lot of this is going to be implemented by the incoming administration. That is why we worked very closely with the incoming administration. And again, that is what an American president makes.
And secondly, President Biden's going to be spending his final full day of his presidency in Charleston, South Carolina. Can you discuss what he's going to be doing there?
We'll have more to share on that, and I don't want to dive into that right now, but we'll certainly have more to share on what that will look like his last couple of days. Get Karen.
Just two quick ones. Does the president intend to leave a letter for President-elect Trump before he leaves office, as Trump did for him?
Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I don't have anything. That's going to be up to the president. I don't have anything on that. But it's a good question. I'm curious, too.
And after Monday, what is the president's plan? What are he and the First Lady doing when they leave Washington on
And
Monday?
we'll have more to share on that as well.
Thank you for serving as press secretary and answering our questions for the last couple of years.
Thanks.
A couple quick ones just to clarify some things, probably yes or no. I know you have no readout of any calls between President Biden and President-elect Trump. Just declaratively, can you say, no, there has not been a call between them or in any of the last 2 weeks on this specific topic of Israel?
Look, I have not asked that question, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here. You always give me homework, Peter. Every time I come, you always tell me, can you go back and tell? Okay. 24/7, yeah.
If I can ask you briefly about tonight's address, if you can take us into that room.
Yeah.
Who is going to be in attendance? I trust the First Lady. Will family members be
Yeah.
there? Who else will be there? And is there anything else surrounding it?
It's a very good question. We'll have more color for you later on in the evening. What I can say is the president is certainly very much looking forward to this moment, speaking directly to the American peoples. Not every day you get to do an oval address. He gets to do another oval address, obviously his last one, in prime time. And so we will certainly have more color of who's going to be in the room and what that will look like as we get closer.
And then last question, I'll leave it to my colleagues, is
Yeah.
it's tradition that at the end of the year the president would do a news conference in advance of departure. The president would take questions on a variety of different topics. What was the decision making? Why did this president decide not to do either of those before his departure?
I think the president, especially in the past couple of days, has been very much engaging with all of you, taking questions. He did it today. He himself wanted to stand up a moment to talk about the economy, but also take your questions just a couple of days ago. That is something that he wanted to do, and your colleagues let me finish. Your colleagues asked some really important questions that he was able to answer, an array of questions. And what I can say is I don't have anything to preview at this time, but certainly he's going to continue to engage with all of you. And, we have been, he's been very much involved in going back and forth with all of you in the past couple of days, and that is something that he wanted to make sure that he did that.
Were there any concerns about his public performance in a setting like that?
I think the issue that I have with that question, Peter, is that he literally did a press conference with all of you days ago with some of your colleagues,
right,
and took
that's
multiple.
different, than an hour-long press conference. That's why I asked the question.
Look, but he took questions. He took questions on an array of issues, went back and forth, and he took questions today. He's been pretty consistent over the past couple of days in doing that. And that shows his performance, that those are questions that he doesn't know what you guys are going to ask, and he takes them and he answers them, and I think that is something that is important to him. This goes back to the freedom of the press, understanding how important you all are to our democracy, and understanding how having that continuation of a back and forth, even when we don't agree, is important. And so I'm pretty sure you all will continue to hear from him in the last couple of days of his administration, and he certainly looks forward to it.
Karine, we're sort of dancing around who gets to take credit for this deal.
No one's dancing around here.
Our colleague at the State Department briefed our colleagues that President Trump was critical in getting this deal over the line. Do you not agree with that statement?
Look, I'm not going to speak to a random person. I don't know who this person is. I'm not going to. Oh. What I can say is, look, obviously Matt Miller will speak for himself. What I can say is there are steps that were taken here that is really important and critical, and that started with this president starting a framework that was agreed upon by the world back in May. And that was because of this president. That was because he was able to lay out his thoughts, his thinking on how to move forward with this negotiation. What I said before, this is someone who understands foreign policy as I'm talking about the president. He understands how difficult it is, and this was not an easy one. And so he has the experience. He was able to get that going, to get that started. So this has been going on for some time. It has. I mean, that's just the reality of it. That is just the facts of it. Have we been coordinating and working closely with the incoming Trump administration, their transition team? Yes. And we've been very forthcoming about that. But the fact of the matter is, it took someone who has the experience that this president had to get this going, to get this moving, to understand what negotiations look like. And that's what this president was able to bring to the table. And it got done under his watch. It got done today.
And then secondly, obviously this is a really big day on the foreign policy national security front. This is your last briefing, or the administration's last briefing. Is there a reason why John Kirby isn't here to take your questions?
So look, I just mentioned that Brett McGurk is going to be holding, and National Security Council is holding up a call. I think that's going to be really important. They will talk more about the implementation of this. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was just here 2 days ago on Monday, and I think kind of laid out a really good framework for all of this, the thinking process, how this was going to move forward. And Brett McGurk, he is on the ground. He has all of the information. He has been there at the direction of this president, certainly with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan leading that effort. And so he's going to have a lot more information than any of us here will have, because he's been on the ground, understanding, working with the negotiators and understanding how this process has worked. So that's how this works. Go ahead.
You said that you wish your successor luck. Have you had any extensive conversations with her about how this job is done? Or?
I haven't. But I'm not the only White House press secretary or soon-to-be former White House press secretary out there. So I'm sure there are many people for her to connect with and speak with. But I have not had a conversation with her.
Thanks, Karine. How many Americans are going to be in the first tranche, and when will they start coming out?
It's a good question. That's why Brett McGurk is going to be holding this National Security Council call. He will have all of that information. The president even said the same thing when he was asked a similar question, that we will have more details to share. And so the National Security Council, Brett McGurk, will share that with all of you, hopefully momentarily, once this is done.
I'm confused on why we're having the last briefing of the administration on what's been one of the defining wars of this presidency without being able to answer those questions.
I just said he's going to hold a press call, and he'll take your questions on that. Okay. I think that's important to hear directly from the person who's on the ground. I think that's an important thing to do.
Okay.
Right?
We were under the impression that there were folks here in the building who had those answers, who could tell us.
National Security Council is holding up a call so that Brett McGurk can get on that call and take your questions.
Okay. Why is it that you seem unwilling to extend any credit to Trump for this deal? Couldn't he just have said, hold off until I'm in office?
What I will say is that what we know to be true, what we know this process, how it has moved over the past 8 months, this is a deal that happened under the framework that this president put forward and was endorsed by the world. And this is also an administration that has had certainly the support, the back of Israel, that helped denigrate Hamas, their military, severely, weaken them. And we created, because of also doing that, we created the conditions for this deal. That is what has happened over the last 8 months. And we have talked closely, worked closely, coordinated closely with the incoming administration, and that is how we've been able to get to this point. And the reason we were able to do that, having that conversation with the transition team, is because this president believed in the importance of having a peaceful transfer of power.